Do you feel like you're wasting time at work? Do you worry that you might lose your job and everything would still go well? Perhaps you believe the world might be a better place if your profession hadn't really existed. This issue might seem simple to some viewers, but it may be more challenging for those of you who are now in middle management position of an insurance underwriting firm and are in charge of the human resource department. John Maynard Keynes projected in the 1930s that Great Britain and the US would have a 15-hour work week by the end of the century. Everything points to the fact that he was correct. In terms of available technology, we should be able to pull this off. Still, it didn't turn out to be the case. However, technology has been used to find the methods to increase labor intensity. To get there, completely useless occupations have to be invented. Most of the working population, especially in Europe and North America, spends their whole lives doing things they don't think are necessary.
I had noticed over the years that you keep meeting people who are embarrassed by what they do. You meet them at a party, especially if you're someone like me. I'm an anthropologist, and most people think that's kind of interesting. So they'll say, "Oh, you're an anthropologist. What is that? You go to like foreign countries? You live in villages? Like, what's that like? And how do you, So they'll start asking all these questions, and then you say, "Well, what do you do?" And they'll, "You don't really want to know." And so,
incalculable harm is done to people's morale and spiritual well-being as a result of this scenario. It has left an emotional wound on all of us. However, hardly anybody discusses this issue. Why didn't the paradise that Keynes predicted come true in the 1960s when it was all still avidly anticipated? The common argument advanced now is that he overlooked the dramatic rise in consumption. We have collectively opted for more leisure time and entertainment over few working hours. A minute's thinking demonstrates this morality story isn't true. It's true that many new occupations and markets have emerged since the 1920s, but only some of them are involved in making and selling of sushi rolls, iPhones, or designer footwear. Now, what exactly are these emerging occupations? Before we explain, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos. The latest analysis examining U.S. employment rates from 1910 to 2000 provides a concise overview. The quality of domestic staff, factory employees, and farmers has plummeted in the recent century.
I told you the truth. I mean, I got this job. I'm the senior East Coast vision manager for this company, and I don't really do anything. I just file reports, and nobody really reads them. And we create these committees and pass things back and forth, and it's just like bullshit.
The proportion of workforce that comprises professionals, managers, clerks, salespeople, and service providers has increased from 25% to 75% within the exact same time period. As projected, many productive occupations have been mechanized. But instead of enabling a large decrease in working hours to liberate the world's people to follow their own projects, joys, ambitions, and concepts, people have witnessed the increasing of the administration sector, including the emergence of an entire new business like monetary services or telecommunications, or the enormous growth of sectors like corporate law, academics, health administration, and human resources. But these figures don't include individuals who offer administration, technology, or security assistance for these businesses, or the vast myriad of auxiliary industries that only exist since everybody else invests in so much time operating in every other. The inefficient workers would be eliminated by the efficient market system, which would then penalize the corporations that pay for these inefficient workers' salaries while benefiting the most efficient ones, right?
What about do you actually do anything at your job? How many hours a day do you really work? And a lot of people say, well, to be honest, I think what I do, you could probably do it in 3 hours, but a week, but I stretch it out. And they always say, don't tell my boss, okay? But, a computer could do this whole thing.
Well, no. But to comprehend why it's time to ponder how money works in contemporary times to sustain the lives of those who labor to validate their own significance, and to begin with this idiosyncrasy of contemporary high-tech capitalism, we must first examine its ideological opposite, Soviet communism. The foundation of the Soviet Union was the concept of heroic labors. The government deemed it as a noble occupation. The term Soviet referred to labor's council in a broad sense, and citizens were immensely proud of their jobs. This became an issue after there were not enough employment for everyone. As a result of pressure to reach full employment, some workers were assigned obsolete responsibilities. It was a badge of pride for managers to supervise the works of many of their fellow citizens, so they employed as many employees as possible. Moreover, they were worried that if they didn't provide the positions now, they would be unable to hire the individuals they really needed in the future. Some employees were assigned occupations like checking unended inventory of nuts and bolts as a result of this labor hoarding. Although the West was now quite different from Russia in the 1950s, there are a few worrying parallels. This concept. When anthropologist David Graeber wrote Bull Jobs, wherein he classified the 5 most prevalent types of employment as being completely useless, the concept began to gain momentum. He referred to the first group as the flunkies.
I have broken them down into 5 basic types. There are flunky jobs, which are basically people who just are there to make someone else look good. A lot of people sitting around offices say they basically don't do anything except pass emails to someone and say, no, that's spam, or, they're just there because if you don't have someone sitting at your desk, you're not actually a real executive.
Which may include anybody from a doorman to a driver. Each of these persons existed to just boost the self-esteem of others, and each of those is readily replaceable by advancing technologies. Then comes the duct tape. These people reduce issues temporarily when they may be resolved quite completely elsewhere. For example, if a warehouse had a stock supervisor who also had access to the system, inventory records might be updated either electronically or, at least, in real time by all the workers on the floor. Graeber tells the story of a duct tape worker whose whole career consisted of patching up the work of seemingly bright statisticians. A closer look reveals that this shining star was really a complete dud, so that the duct tape would have to combat bureaucracy to correct the workers' errors before they caused serious harm. Since the duct taper was likely adding some value, it might be capable of producing even more efficiently, if unnecessarily, impediments were eliminated. This demonstrates that terminating the individual in the occupation is not necessarily the best answer in the situation.
The next one is, I call them duct tapers. Duct tapers are people who are there to fix a problem that does not need to exist and everybody knows it.
The third group of unnecessary occupations, however, is not as promising. The box tickers, the worldwide force of mindless sheep found in large corporations. Their presence lends credibility to these businesses in the eyes of their rivals. Consider the folks' responsibility for producing business newsletters that include profiles of high-ranking officials or whatever it is they really covered in such publications. No one reads it anyhow, so what's the point? However, a corporation might seem to be of low importance and of unworthy doing a trade with or employing, for it lacks such amenities as an inside newspaper, party organizing committee, or cultural coordinator.
Box tickers are people who are there to allow an organization to say they're doing something that they're not doing. There's a lot of that in government, but corporations increasingly do that too. So one person said, I work at a care home. My job is to do interviews and collect data on what sort of entertainment people would like to have, which I then tabulate and file.
The true horrors of the con job world awaits us now. The goons. Goons is a slang term for a certain type of worker who has a net negative effect on society, but yet important to the functioning of our civilization. Lawyers employed by a company, but not outside of it, are a prime example of this. They don't contribute much to the bottom line, but failing to retain those in-house counsels may result in a much higher legal fee when defending against crimes filed by rival businesses that do. Patent holders are perfect illustrations of this. They are businesses who acquire large portfolios of generic copyrights from other firms and then use them to sue others in hopes of reaching out of court settlements. Big businesses all around the globe are complicit in this zero-sum game. It is well acknowledged that Apple filed a patent lawsuit against Samsung for a rectangular smartphone with rounded corners. Putting aside your opinions on patents and copyrights, what do you believe the hundreds of individuals whose jobs it is to execute that judgment really accomplished? In addition to attorneys, there are lobbyists who work to alter the laws of the game entirely, and salesmen whose only purpose in life is to facilitate the transfer of goods and services between companies.
Goons are people who are basically there to, you don't need them unless somebody else has them. Sort of like armies, right? If nobody had an army, no one would need an army. Same is true of corporate lawyers, telemarketers, all kinds of people like that. So they often say, this is total bullshit. There's no need for this.
You might think thugs are horrible, and yet they have none of the very worst of this group of useless employees, the taskmasters. They are the folks tasked with keeping tabs on and managing others who do not need to do so close attention. Somebody like a sales representative who rules on a group of individuals with the very exact job description is a tiny, slightly different, but efficient leadership does occur, particularly when it is coordinating with a squad of a broad range of abilities. They will, at best, give an expensive booster, trying to get others to put in extra job efforts that could be bogus. At worst, they'll be time wasters who try to prove their relevance by holding pointless meetings and writing strategic purpose statements, diverting attention from efforts from tasks where they maybe genuinely make a difference.
Taskmasters, who are basically middle management. They're people who are there either to supervise people who don't need supervising, which is most of middle management's, people write to me all the time. They say, I'm supposed to be making them work. They'd work all by themselves. And, I have to pretend I'm doing something. So I make up these numbers and they do box ticking exercises or something.
While each of these functions may play a part in the job description of certain individuals, others may discover that their positions require a mix of all five. Most senior managers have jobs despite overseeing areas that contribute little to the company as a whole. This is often due to the fact that complex organizational structures make the top brass feel most important. However, it doesn't explain how we got here. Since the union was so concentrated on ensuring that everyone had employment, and since the country valued hard work so highly, it even created unnecessary jobs. On the other hand, our capitalist system is supposedly superior. Yes, in a way, yet we continue to be hampered by the same overbearing bureaucracy. Although businesses might benefit from eliminating such duties, such incentives might not always correspond with those who make important decisions. Middle managers today are no different from the Soviet industrial workers who amass subordinates in order to boost up their own ego. Like Soviet factories plastered with propaganda praising the superiority of its workers, modern LinkedIn profiles boast well about the great honor it was for certain experts to lead the collaborative developments efforts to improve customer happiness throughout the big corporations' many online sales channels.
Back in the Soviet Union, they did stuff like that. They made up all these jobs because they had a full employment program. Everybody had to have a job whether or not you actually needed them to be doing anything. So they would, set up these things where to buy a piece of beef in the store, you'd have to go to one person to get the beef, and then you got a ticket, and then you have to take the ticket on another line. They just make up employment.
Just as the Soviet Union was fixated on ensuring that everyone had a job to perform, no matter how useless, so too are the contemporary organizations concerned on ensuring that all employees work a full 40-hour per week, no matter how unnecessary it is, before taking into account the bureaucracy. Let's get this straight. Democracies like the United States do not have completely unrestricted markets. Rather, they have rules and regulations governing how to do, quite everything. Have a desire to construct a manufacturing plant? You'll have to be in the certain area that is designated for industrialization. Hold a proper tender for the contract to construct the plant. Get the right kind of insurance, and if you want to export your goods, pay the right kind of customs and excise. These procedures need the involvement of other huge organizations, all of which are likely to be safe havens for bullies. It's not meant to take sides on the size of government. Both large and small programs have their merits and drawbacks, but businesses have played a crucial role in shaping the current system. As more laws have been passed as a direct result of increased lobbying activity, it makes it very difficult for entrepreneurs of any size to launch and expand their businesses without the assistance of accountants and attorneys. There's a case to be made that serves as the interests of big businesses by making it more difficult for the upstart rival to get traction, but we're not going to do that. In any case, can this problem be fixed? Collectively, as a people? Sure. Except the fact that it's fine not to work a standard week of 40 hours. Almost all occupations contain some element of nonsense in their day-to-day operation, so the assumption that they are all or nothing is totally not accurate. It would be much simpler to identify those who aren't pitching in if people were more comfortable saying things like, "My task is completed, I'm done for the day." Simple as a person? No. The reality is that if you end up at a job with lots of unnecessary duties, you may simply have to ignore it for a while or try to find something else you need to do in your own time that doesn't include dealing with nonsense. Or you could just accept it. Many individuals take pride in their worthless but impressive sounding titles. Knowing that the meetings and PowerPoint presentations are futile can make them more bearable. For more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel.